Hey everyone! This is a quick reminder to subscribe and hit that like button. It lets me know that you are enjoying my content. Also, feel free to drop your suggestions for future stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and let's dive right in. I woke up to the sound of Kirby scratching at the edge of my bed, his usual way of reminding me that he existed and that his breakfast was a priority over anything else. With a groggy sigh, I dragged myself up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. My small apartment was dimly lit by the weak morning sunlight pushing through the blinds, casting striped shadows over the kitchen island and couch. It was a typical morning, the same as always. Routine kept me sane. It was the only thing I had left after everything. I brewed my coffee, poured Kirby's kibble into his bowl, and settled in front of my laptop to start my shift. The remote 911 operator job had been the perfect escape for me. No coworkers whispering behind my back, no pitying stares, no small-town gossip about how I was the reason Amber was dead. I could just sit here, invisible, answering calls, processing emergencies like a machine. I took a sip of coffee and logged in. The screen flickered, loading my usual dashboard, until something went wrong. The screen flashed red. A huge, bold message filled the display. Emergency alert. Do not pick up the phone. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My first thought was that it was some kind of glitch. Maybe the emergency broadcast system had overridden my screen? But it didn't make sense. No other alerts had come through. I grabbed my phone and checked for notifications. Nothing. No government warnings, no text alerts. Just a completely normal, blank screen. Weird. I hesitated before closing the alert pop-up with a few clicks. It disappeared without resistance, and everything went back to normal. Maybe just a weird error, a false alarm. I tried to brush it off, but the unease stayed, curling around my stomach like a tightening knot. Lunch break came around, which for me meant shifting from the couch to the kitchen island. I scrolled through my phone, searching for any mention of the strange alert. Nothing. No news articles, no posts, no one else had received it. It was just me. That thought sent a shiver down my spine. I refreshed my search over and over, but the results didn't change. If this was a real emergency alert, why wasn't it being reported anywhere? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some kind of virus? A hacker? It wouldn't be the first time someone exploited emergency broadcast systems just to mess with people. That had to be it. I shook my head, closed my browser, and went back to work. But then it happened again. This time, the alert wouldn't close. It covered my entire screen, blocking out everything else. No matter how many times I clicked, it wouldn't go away. I tried to force quit, restart, even disconnect from the Wi-Fi. Nothing worked. I could feel my pulse quicken. If this really was some kind of virus, I wouldn't be able to work like this. My job depended on my laptop. Annoyed, I pulled up Google Maps and searched for the nearest computer repair shop. I found one about 15 minutes away, grabbed my bag, and headed out the door. As I zipped up my jacket, my phone buzzed. Incoming call, unknown number. I stared at it. The alert message flashed through my head. I felt ridiculous hesitating. It was probably just a scam call. Nothing more. And yet, something in me screamed not to pick up. I declined the call. Kirby scratched at the door, signaling that it was time for his walk. Grateful for the distraction, I clipped his leash on and stepped outside, my mind still tangled with unease. The computer repair shop was exactly what I expected. Small, cluttered, and run by a guy who looked like he hated his life and everyone in it. I walked up to the counter and placed my laptop down with a hesitant smile. "Hello. I think I might have a virus. Can you take a look?" The guy looked up at me like I was an annoying fly buzzing around his ear. With a dramatic sigh, he popped his gum, spit it into the nearby trash can, and grabbed my laptop. "What's the problem?" he asked flatly. I shifted my weight uncomfortably. Social interaction was not my strong suit. "There was this red alert screen that popped up, and now I can't get rid of it," I explained. He muttered something under his breath, loud enough for me to hear. "Can these blondes stop clicking on every damn ad they see?" The comment stung, but I let it go. I just needed my laptop fixed. Kirby, still waiting patiently by my feet, wagged his tail. The guy noticed him and scowled. "Don't let that rat pee in here. You'll be paying for it if he does." I clenched my jaw. Not worth it. I bent down and scooped Kirby into my arms, keeping him close. The guy turned on my laptop. I braced myself for the red screen to appear, proving I wasn't crazy, but the alert was gone. The screen looked completely normal, as if nothing had ever happened. The guy raised an eyebrow, already packing up my laptop. "Looks fine to me." I wanted to argue. I wanted to insist that something had been there, that I wasn't just imagining things, but my throat tightened and my anxiety won. I mumbled, "Thanks anyway," grabbed my laptop and walked out as fast as possible. Embarrassing. And yet, as I stepped outside, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling crawling up my spine. He had looked at me like he recognized me, like he knew who I was and what I had done. I hurried home with Kirby, trying to convince myself that this was over. The nightmares always found me. It didn't matter how many years passed. I'd wake up with the weight of Amber's death pressing down on my chest, like some invisible force had been sitting there all night. This time was no different. I had dreamed about the party again, the one we went to before the accident. It played out the same way it always did. Amber arguing with Tom, her face flushed with anger, his voice sharp and mocking. She had been drinking. Too much. I spent half the night looking for her, and when I finally found her, she was already in the car, sitting behind the wheel. I got in. We talked. She cried, and then Tom appeared. I never remembered this part before, but now it was so vivid, like my brain had unlocked a new piece of the puzzle. He came up to Amber's window. She rolled it down. I never got to hear what he said next, because I woke up. The apartment was still dark. My heart was racing, and I wiped at my face, realizing I'd been crying in my sleep. I rolled over and checked the time. 5:30 a.m. There was no way I was going back to sleep. I grabbed Kirby's leash and pulled on a jacket. The cold morning air was a welcome distraction as we stepped outside. The streets were still quiet, just the occasional porch light flickering and the faint hum of cars in the distance. I let Kirby sniff the sidewalk, his tail wagging absent-mindedly. For once, I felt like I could breathe. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I froze mid-step. Incoming call. Unknown number. My throat tightened. I knew it was just a coincidence. But after everything with the alert, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I stared at the screen. I don't know why, but I didn't pick up. The call went to voicemail, and I let out a slow breath, my fingers gripping Kirby's leash a little tighter. Maybe it was just a wrong number. By the time I got home, I had almost convinced myself it was nothing. Almost. I closed the door behind me and unclipped Kirby's leash, letting him scurry to his water bowl. I was about to pour myself a glass of water too when I saw it. My laptop. It was supposed to be in my bag, but it wasn't. It was on the kitchen island, open, pointed directly at me. The screen was red. Emergency alert. Do not pick up the phone. My stomach dropped. I had left it in my bag. I knew I had. I took a step forward, then another. The screen's glow made the dark apartment feel even smaller. I reached out with a shaky hand and slammed the laptop shut. The noise was so loud, Kirby whimpered. For a moment, everything was still. Then my phone buzzed. I slowly pulled it out of my pocket. Same number. The same freaking number. I answered before I could think twice. My voice was tight, barely a whisper. "I don't know what you want, but..." The voice on the other end cut me off. "I know what you did." My blood ran cold. I gripped the phone tighter. "What?" A pause. Then the voice spoke again. "And I will make you pay for it." The line went dead. I stood there staring at the screen, my heart pounding against my ribs. The voice had been weird, distorted, but familiar, too familiar. Something about the way they spoke, the rhythm of their words, I knew them, but I just couldn't place it. Shaking, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop again. The alert was gone. Like it had never been there in the first place. I forced myself to start my shift early, anything to take my mind off of what just happened. But the whole time I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, that whoever had called me wasn't done yet. The voice on the phone echoed in my head, looping over and over like a bad recording. "I know what you did, and I will make you pay for it." I had replayed the call so many times in my mind that I could almost convince myself I had imagined it. That maybe my exhaustion had warped the words, stretched them into something worse than they were. But the one thing I couldn't ignore, the one thing that kept my stomach in knots, was how familiar the voice had sounded. I just couldn't figure out who it belonged to. I logged into work early, hoping that shifting my focus to emergency calls would help push everything else aside. But my brain was wired with unease, every small noise making me flinch. And when I opened my laptop, the red alert screen was gone, like it had never existed. I sat there, staring at the normal desktop, feeling like I was losing my mind. Had it really happened? Or had I imagined it? A bad dream mixed into reality? I worked through my shift, the minutes dragging by painfully slow. My coffee tasted stale, my hands felt cold, and even Kirby, usually content to nap while I worked, sat by the door, ears twitching at the slightest sounds from outside. I didn't tell myself that I was just being paranoid. I already knew the truth. Something was wrong. When my shift ended, I closed my laptop and leaned back on the couch, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I felt like I'd been carrying something heavy all day, a weight on my shoulders I couldn't shake. Maybe some fresh air would help. I clipped Kirby's leash on and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sky had started to darken, but the streetlights hadn't fully come on yet, leaving the world in that eerie in-between. Halfway down the block, I stopped to check my phone. Hundreds of notifications, missed calls, texts. I frowned, unlocking the screen. The first few messages made my breath catch in my throat. "We know you killed Amber. I know it was you. Justice for Amber." One after another, filling my inbox. My vision blurred as I scrolled, my stomach twisting into knots so tight I thought I might be sick. Then my phone buzzed again. Incoming call. Unknown number. I answered without thinking, my voice shaking. "Who is this?" The response made my blood run ice cold. "Your days are counted, Maya." And then I knew. I knew who it was. The same voice, the same words, the exact same phrase Tom had whispered under his breath that night. Back at the party. Back when Amber slammed his hand in the car window. Back before she died. "It should have been you, not Amber." The line went dead. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. It had been Tom. Tom had been the one calling me. The texts, the calls, the threats. For 5 years he had been silent, disappeared from my life, and now suddenly he was back. Why? Was he trying to scare me? Hurt me? Kill me? I blinked hard, forcing down the panic clawing at my throat. Kirby whined at my feet, sensing my distress. I needed to get home. Now. I gripped Kirby's leash tightly and walked as fast as I could, my pulse hammering in my ears. But no matter how fast I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I locked the door the second I stepped inside. My hands were shaking so badly I had to fumble with the deadbolt twice before I got it secured. Kirby stayed close to my legs, his usual excitement after a walk completely gone. His tail wasn't wagging. His ears were flattened. He let out a low whine, staring at the door like something was waiting on the other side. Something about that scared me more than anything else. I took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. Tom. Tom had been the one calling me. Tom had sent the texts. Tom was the reason for all of this. But why now? After 5 years of nothing? After 5 years of pretending like I didn't exist? I needed answers. I moved to the kitchen, placed my phone on the counter, and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection in the window above the sink looked pale, wide-eyed, like a stranger wearing my skin. I felt sick. I squeezed my eyes shut, and then the memories came back. That night, I had been drinking. Not much, just enough to feel light, a slight buzz warming my skin. But Amber had been worse. Tom had humiliated her in front of his friends, made a joke that went too far, called her names, laughed at her expense. She stormed off. I looked for her for an hour. When I finally found her, she was already in the car. I climbed into the passenger seat trying to talk to her, trying to calm her down. Then Tom appeared at her window. "Baby, come on, you know I'm just joking around." Amber's grip on the wheel tightened. "I don't care, Tom. You're making fun of me, and I'm done with that." She reached for the window controls. I spoke up. "Dude, you're a disaster, not a boyfriend. She doesn't need you." That was the moment. That was the detail I had forgotten. Amber squeezed Tom's hand in the window. Hard. He screamed, cursed, yanked his hand away as soon as she let go. His face twisted in pain, but his eyes were on me. Not Amber. Me. And in that moment, I saw something that I didn't fully understand at the time. Pure, seething hatred. Tom turned on his heel and stormed back inside. Amber sighed, rubbing her temples. "We should go home, Maya." Her voice was still shaky. "It's late. These people aren't worth our time." I nodded. but I hesitated, placing a hand on her wrist. Amber, you are drunk. I should drive. She rolled her eyes. I've been drinking water since I got in the car, and let me remind you, you don't even have your license yet. I wanted to argue. I should have argued, but she was my big sister, and I trusted her. She started the car, and we drove away. The first few minutes were fine. The road was dark, stretching endlessly in front of us, the glow of the dashboard the only real light in the car. Amber tapped her fingers against the steering wheel, humming softly to the music playing on the radio. Then, headlights. Too bright, too close. A car pulled up behind us, riding our bumper aggressively. Amber stiffened but kept her hands firm on the wheel. Cops? I asked, twisting in my seat to get a look. No, she muttered. I squinted, trying to make out the car. It was black, sleek, familiar. My stomach twisted. Tom's car. The headlights flashed once, twice. Amber's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Ignore him, she mumbled. The car behind us swerved sharply. And then, bam. The impact sent a violent jolt through the car as Tom rammed into our back bumper. Amber gasped, gripping the wheel tighter. What the hell is he doing? I screamed. Another hit. Harder this time. The car lurched forward, tires screeching against the pavement. He's trying to run us off the road, Amber shouted. She tried to speed up, but Tom's car swung to the side, slamming into us again. I saw the ditch before we hit it. The right front tire slipped off the asphalt. The whole car shook violently. Amber tried to correct the wheel, but it was too late. We flipped. Once, twice, over and over. Metal screeched, glass shattered. Gravity lost all meaning. When we finally stopped, we were upright, but tilted sideways in the ditch. Smoke filled the air. My head was spinning. My body ached everywhere. Amber? I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond. I turned my head and felt relief flood my chest. She was breathing. There was a cut on her forehead, but she was breathing. I tried to move. Pain shot up my arm. I didn't even know where I was bleeding from. Then I remembered. Cops, DUI, Amber's future. If they found us like this, if they knew she had been drinking, her life was over. Law school, career, everything. I reached for her, shaking her shoulder. Amber, wake up. She stirred, groaning. What? You have to switch seats with me. Her eyes barely focused on me. What? Amber, listen to me. You have to switch seats. I'll take the blame. She was still out of it. She wasn't thinking, which is why she let me do it. I unbuckled her, guiding her into the passenger seat. I slid into the driver's seat, buckled in. I had just finished adjusting her seatbelt when I saw them. Headlights. Too close. Tom's car. I barely had time to register what was happening. The lights were coming right for us. Right for Amber's side of the car. I tried to scream, tried to move, but the last thing I remember. A deafening crash. Glass exploding. Amber's body jerking violently. Then, darkness. I woke up in the hospital. The doctors told me Amber was dead. They told me it had been a hit and run. They told me they never found the driver. And back then, I had believed them. Because I didn't remember the headlights, because I didn't remember Tom, because my own mind had erased the truth. But now I remembered everything, and I knew Tom had tried to kill me that night, but he had killed Amber instead. And now, 5 years later, he was coming back to finish the job. I sucked in a sharp breath, snapping back to reality. Kirby let out another whimper. I turned away from the sink, pressing my palms against the counter to steady myself. Tom had been angry at me. Not at Amber. At me. And now, after all these years, he had finally decided to do something about it. My phone buzzed against the counter. I didn't want to look. I really, really didn't want to look. But I did. The screen lit up with another text message. We all know the truth. We know what you did. And now, you're going to pay for it. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. Kirby's ears shot up. His body went rigid. He let out a single, low growl. The kind that meant someone was outside. Watching. Waiting. I swallowed hard and turned toward the window. I didn't see anyone. But somehow, I knew they were there. I couldn't move. I stood frozen in my kitchen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. Kirby's growl didn't stop. His tiny body was tense, ears pinned back, hackles raised. He wasn't just afraid. He was warning me. Someone was out there. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. I grabbed my phone from the counter with trembling fingers. Another text flashed on the screen. Call the police, now. I didn't hesitate. I dialed 911 and pressed the phone to my ear, my breath shaky. The moment the operator picked up, I barely got out. My name is Maya Carter. Someone is stalking me, and I think they're outside my apartment. I heard the dispatcher start to respond. Then, the front door slammed open. I screamed. The deadbolt snapped like it was nothing, the cupboard I had pushed in front of the door flying across the floor with a loud crash. Kirby lunged forward, barking like crazy, and then I saw him, Tom, standing in my doorway, dressed in black, holding a gun. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone. I could still hear the 911 operator on the line, but my fingers were numb. Kirby ran at Tom, barking furiously. And Tom kicked him, hard. Kirby let out a sharp yelp and hit the wall. I gasped, instinctively trying to run to him, but Tom raised the gun. "Do not move, Maya." His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he had been waiting for this moment for years. He took a slow step forward, his gun still trained on me. "You know," he muttered, almost thoughtful. "I tried to live with it. I really did. But I finally realized something. Another step closer. I was never the problem." He tilted his head, looking at me like I was some kind of puzzle piece that never fit. "You were the problem." My throat was dry. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. "You were the one who made Amber hate me," he continued. "You were the one who put her in the passenger seat." I shook my head. "No, don't lie to me," he snapped. His voice echoed in my small apartment, bouncing off the walls like a gunshot. Then he took another step forward, and the gun was right at my head. I squeezed my eyes shut. This was it. This was how I died. Then, a noise, a blur of movement, and suddenly Tom was on the ground. A police officer tackled him, shoving him face first onto the floor. The gun clattered out of his hands. I gasped, stumbling back, my whole body trembling. There were more voices now, more officers storming into my apartment. One of them grabbed Tom's arms, forcing them behind his back. "Stay down," Tom thrashed, his face contorted in rage. "You don't get it," he screamed. "It was always supposed to be her." His words pierced through me like a knife. It was always supposed to be me, not Amber. Me. Kirby limped toward me, whining, and I scooped him into my arms, holding him close as he trembled against me. A police officer stepped toward me. "Miss Carter, are you okay?" I nodded, but my body was still shaking. My gaze flickered to my phone on the counter. The screen was still lit up. A new text message. "Computer." I turned slowly. My laptop sat on the couch, exactly where I had left it, and it was still recording. A blinking red light in the corner of the screen. The entire thing. Tom's confession. It had been captured. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, questions, and hushed voices. Tom was arrested. The police took my statement, and my laptop, it held the proof they needed. The trial didn't take long. With Tom's confession caught on video, there wasn't much to argue. He was convicted, and for the first time in 5 years, my name was cleared. The town had spent years whispering behind my back. Now, they whispered about him. I sat in my apartment, staring at the headlines on my phone. Tom Weaver convicted for murder of Amber Carter. New evidence reveals truth behind 5-year-old hit-and-run case. Victim's sister clears name after years of false accusations. I set the phone down and exhaled. It was over. It should have felt like a victory. But all I felt was tired. Kirby nudged my leg, his tail wagging gently. He had healed fast, like dogs always seem to do. If only it were that easy for me. I reached down and scratched his ears. "We did it, bud." He licked my hand. The apartment felt quieter than usual. Not just because the police had left, or because the weight of suspicion had finally been lifted. But because I knew I wasn't alone. Not really. I looked at my laptop. It was still on the couch. It had been recording everything, sure, but something about it felt off. Like it had done more than just capture evidence. I hesitated before opening it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a single new message appeared on the screen. Not an alert, not a threat. Just 3 simple words. "Thank you, Maya." I swallowed hard, my vision blurring. I didn't believe in ghosts. I never had. But maybe Amber had been here all along. Helping me, protecting me, saving me. I reached out and placed a hand on the keyboard. "Thank you too." And just like that, the message vanished. The screen went back to normal. No more red alerts, no more warnings, just silence, just peace. For the first time in 5 years, I let myself breathe.